really the only way we know how to do stuff, right?
I don't know how, if I have to be boring, I don't want to do it.
That's exactly right. So welcome everybody to Cybercrime Junkies. I am very honored and very excited. Today we have a friend of our show, a world famous ethical hacker, cybersecurity expert, media commentator on CNN, part of Wall Street Journal, Fox News, CNBC, apparently going both sides of the political gamut. Author of Cyber Fraud, Web of Lies, and keynote speaker to Fortune 500 companies and more, Bryan Seely. Bryan, welcome to the studio, man.
Thanks for having me again. It's always a pleasure.
I had so much fun the first time we spoke. I've been wanting to have you on ever since, honestly, because I felt like I could have talked to you for hours.
I appreciate that. Yeah, that is definitely one of my gifts. Shutting up is not one of them.
It's always so fun. I've been told the exact same thing. So for those that may not know who you are, you were a Marine, U.S. Marine. Yep. So real life G.I. Joe. And honestly, thank you for your service. The Marines, the armed services, they're phenomenal. And I know there's a lot of struggle that a lot of vets go through. It's most undervalued things in our society, and we all take it for granted. So thank you for that. Since you've been, I want to say your first claim to fame was wiretapping the Secret Service. Let's just glean over that. Let's just glean over that real quick. Like, walk us through real quick what happened.
I found some things I didn't like on Google related to spam. And it wasn't just Google Maps. It was White Pages and Yelp and Bing Maps and all these different places. So people building fake companies and taking business from regular hardworking Americans, small business owners, right, either taking it directly from them or selling it back to them and calling lead generation. And it just involved exploiting certain things to put fake companies on the map.
Come join us as we go behind the scenes of today's most notorious cybercrime, translating cybersecurity into everyday language that's practical and easy to understand. We appreciate you making this an award-winning podcast by downloading our episodes on Apple and Spotify and subscribing to our YouTube channel. This is Cybercrime Junkies, and now the show.
And you can find them in a lot of different categories, but it's mainly companies like locksmiths, carpet cleaners, pool cleaners, landscaping,
true anything, small business, true small.
But they have to
be
ones that come to you wherever you need help. Not you would never go to your pool cleaner's office. So that type of thing. So finding exploits and making some funny business listings to try to get some attention to the problem, and that didn't really work so well. So. I mean, some of them are really funny. Like there was a concentration camp in North Korea that I made an amusement park, and the Westboro Baptist Church became an adult toy store.
Of course.
Dungeon. Yes. And then
of course it did. What about in the White House? Didn't you put Edward Snowden's like ski lodge or something like that?
Oh, no. That was later on. So I put his secret hiding place on the White House lawn, and that's kind of what media showed the most of. And then a year later I did a TED talk about it called Wiretapping the Secret Service Can Be Easy and Fun, and I put another one in the Oval Office. It was Edward's Snow Den. It was a snowboarding shop.
I love it. I mean,
that's still my favorite.
Yes, that is. I think that's one of my favorite things. So I gotta ask, like, how did they not come down on you? And like, they've actually praised you. Secret Service has praised you. FBI has praised you publicly.
I couldn't have planned it better. If I had planned it, I might have done it.
Yeah.
This wasn't a good plan. I ended up walking into the Secret Service office to tell them about it, and like 15 minutes of just explaining, and they're like ready to let me leave. Like they didn't believe me. They
didn't believe that you could actually access wiretap things.
Because
And
it
then
sounds
you had
insane.
to demonstrate it for them, I imagine.
That's
right?
like all I got to do is turn my ear and then look towards the North Star, and I can pick up radio chatter and be like, that's what it sounded like. And ultimately, I just told one of the agents in the room, call the DC office of the Secret Service, and I'll prove it. And so when he hung up his cell phone, I got a notification, and then I got to play back on speaker his conversation he just had with the agent that none of the other guys in the room, including me, could hear the other guy because, you know how phone calls work.
Right.
Well, now we could all hear it, and we could hear the ringing in the beginning, and they have like really good bearing. They don't get rattled. They don't get surprised. But the first one said, "Oh shit!" Like,
wow.
And then they took all my stuff, and then 4 hours of explaining over and over and over.
Yeah, I would imagine right after that they have to make sure you're not a threat, right? And you're like, no, I'm literally trying to just tell you about this vulnerability so you can fix it.
They did make it clear I wasn't under arrest. I wasn't being detained.
Good.
I was being asked to stay. I didn't want to push that. Like, I didn't want to find out at what point they were like, all right, now you have to stay because you're an idiot.
Right.
I mean, we already knew that was the case, but
you already know that's a risk.
I didn't want to prove it.
If you keep talking too much, right?
Oh, no, but see, that's the thing. Like, I was sitting in the room, and I've told this story to a couple people, and they're like, there's no way you did that. And I was like, if you actually really knew me, you'd probably go, yeah, he did that.
Yeah.
So I'm sitting there, and I'm like, hey, is that the new 6 hour? And he's like, yeah, it is. I'm like, well, can I see it? If you took all the bullets out, could I see the gun? And he's like, no. I'm like, I have a chair.
Like, no, kid.
It doesn't have any bullets. If I have it, I can do more damage. And he just gets up and leaves. Like, he didn't even. I'm like, okay, fair enough. All right.
No, you can't play with the toys. Those are loaded.
They weren't going to arrest me for that.
Right.
That wasn't going to be the straw.
Exactly.
It was the wiretapping and the federal wiretapping charges that were definitely going to have some weight. But being a smartass in a room was just.
But they eventually came around, and they eventually.
Yeah. So
they
called
publicly thanked you. It's really remarkable. Not many people can say that.
No, it's not a good idea in any way, shape, or form.
Don't
I
go
don't
seeking
recommend it.
that in general. That's the message to the public.
They let me know I used up all my 9 lives.
Yes, exactly.
You're on a list. We'll make a list for you.
We'll create a list. We're putting a list with your name on the top, and then if anybody else does this to us, we'll add them to your list.
Like Santa Claus, but this one they don't need to check twice. There's only one person on the list.
Oh my. Wow,
Yeah.
wow. Well, that was that was what, about 10 years ago or so?
10 years ago, yeah.
Yeah. Well, and
2015.
you made a splash then.
It led to, that's a really good hook for when you want people to hear an elevator pitch and go, I'm interested in that.
Yes.
I want it. Like we all stop at car wrecks, train wrecks. Like, we want to see someone do something stupid on the news, car chases. Even if we don't wish the guy the best, that guy wiretapped the Secret Service? That sounds stupid. Let's watch that.
If TikTok were a thing, you could have filmed yourself the whole time. I mean, it would have been viral.
I have a couple selfies that I took in the waiting room of the Secret Service.
God, I want
which
those.
were basically just like, ugh.
Yeah, that is great. If we get those from you, they'll be right here. I'll put them right here. So
I'll get you a good copy of one.
Excellent. That's great. Well, and then you also you anonymized the highly valued
was another
mobile.
researcher.
Yeah.
There was an app at the time that's kind of like Whisper, I think is the current iteration of something like that.
Yeah, it was called Secret.
Yep. It was really cool. It was a Google engineer named David Bytow, really smart guy, made something, and another researcher and I figured out that and this is actually what led into research with LinkedIn, is if you take an iPhone and build a contacts list of about 100 or 200 people, and call it like person 1, person 2, person 3, person 4, and you make up a bunch of numbers that are nobodies, and you have 2 or 3 numbers or just one number of a person you want to see if they're on secret. Whenever somebody in your contacts list posts something, it'll show up in your feed. Well, if you know one person out of 100 is real, you can attribute that post to them.
Right.
So now you're stuck with the whole point of the app is gone. being
Right.
able to like say things without having people attribute them to. And it's kind of like imitation game where they figured out the Enigma machine's code by decrypting Heil Hitler, and then we're able to like expand from that. But like having something like that where you like, if you always say ciao at the end of your messages, well, that's not going to work on secret. We all know it's you, idiot.
Right.
So that was a loophole that kind of got a big amount of attention because the app had raised a bunch of funding. The guy was really smart, and they took steps to fix it. They listened. They were really cool about it.
Oh, that's good to know. That's good.
Yeah, really, really smart, really good
Did
approach
they
to
get
it.
bought out eventually, or is that app still around?
I don't actually even know.
Okay.
I think they might have. I'm sure ex-Google engineers, startup founders are probably fine. I'm not so worried about them.
Yep. And when you did that also made a splash. I just want the audience to understand. You were on the front page of Wired, CNN Money, CNET, CNET, Forbes, and the Washington Post all on the same day.
Yeah, that was a busy day.
That was a busy day.
Yeah, my phone did not. And then like Krebs on Security posted about it, and that was one of my first times ever meeting Bryan Krebs and
How was that?
having him.
How was that? Bryan Krebs is one of the quintessential security researchers who always has an excellent take, interesting take on a lot of cybersecurity.
He's one of the most dedicated, I'd say, journalists, and you can like. I think he's written about me 5 or 6 different times. He ended up writing about the book that I wrote, and I gave him a PDF copy to distribute for free through his website. So if anyone wanted to read it and couldn't afford it, go ahead and get it from there. Like the Bryan Krebs edition.
Yep.
I believe in what he does, and the amount of things he tracks down and finds and
really research,
does.
He does incredible investigative journalism in dark
Russian.
web things. Like, it's phenomenal.
He learned how to read and write Russian to be able to go into dark web for it. Like, who does that?
I know.
So I think he's a phenomenal person. There's hard to find his equal in terms of investigative journalism.
Yep.
Really smart. And the amount of things he has to deal with now that he has so much publicity.
I know.
The second he posts anything, the other media, sort of swarms around that topic to get another update, or so they don't like fall too far behind. Yep. So whenever he wrote about anything I did, it was immediately news organizations calling left, right, and center.
Unbelievable. Let's talk about your book a little bit. Cyber Fraud, The Web of Lies. Like, walk everyone. We'll have a link to the actual book for them to purchase it, obviously. What caused you to write the book? What was it that drove you to spend the time and get it published?
That was completely related to the Google Maps ordeal, start to finish, more in depth as to like all the things that sort of happened, how I did it. Yeah, just the whole story in general needed to be sort of told in one way, shape, or form. And it's not particularly well written. I'm not a great writer. If you have like a wobbly coffee table, it'll serve a purpose there forever. It'll hold that up. But it's not a timeless classic. It is more like, this is an interesting novelty. Look how stupid this guy is. And
walk us through. I'm familiar with the book, but walk us through as if I'm not. Like, tell me kind of how you first stumbled upon that vulnerability and what you were seeing with Google Maps at the time.
I had been working with Google Maps stuff in data entry like many, many years prior. And it was just, I had gotten clean and sober, divorced, diagnosed ADHD, living on my own, and I was just bored out of my eyes.
That was
I could not find anything to do, and I'm sitting there on
the
computer looking at old map stuff like, I wonder if this has gotten any better. Because I ended up leaving that sort of career and getting into like network engineering and systems engineering more heavily, and found out it was worse, like across the board worse. So at that point I was like, well, something needs to be done. And then it was just making fake businesses for fun, to see what could be done, and then documenting the process and learning how to talk to journalists or getting their attention in one way, shape, or form.
Right. Making that kind of internal business case, even though it's external. But you had to make the case to explain it, synthesize it down so that the non-technical can understand it.
Right. And then doing my first news story with Como News here in Seattle. It was like, I think it's an ABC affiliate, and a reporter named Matt Markovich, who's been around Seattle forever. That was fun. They recorded me building like a a daycare in North Seattle, and I put it in the top 10 rankings within like 15 minutes. And we ended up calling Google, and the reporter ended up talking to them on the phone, and they're saying, well, that's not possible. And he's like, well, he just did it on camera, and we have the whole thing recorded. We're going to show it. We wanted your comment. And they just hang up.
Oh,
they didn't
know how to address it.
Well, they do, but they don't want to deal with, they want to go about business their way.
Right.
And the way that they were solving a lot of the issues was consumer crowdsourcing edits.
Mm-hmm.
So getting a lot of people all over the place to edit their local neighborhoods. Well, when you have one or two people editing stuff everywhere,
right,
for malicious purposes, it's hard to figure out intent. It's hard to figure out the good people from the bad people when everything they're doing looks the same.
Yeah.
We had disagreements.
How has it evolved since then? Has Google made changes?
Yeah, they had to make some
harder?
changes. They did. They got rid of Google Map Maker as this whole product back-end editor, and I can't say it's all me, but some people who don't like me say it was me. That it's the reason we can't have nice things.
Yes, because we break them.
So sorry.
Even for a good intent, right? Even for a humorous intent.
I'm not sorry if you built it badly and it got misused and you didn't prepare. An idiot like me shouldn't have been able to take down the whole system.
Right, exactly. Well, and I think you raise a good issue that it's an inherent issue in cybersecurity right now, and that is just secure by design, right? Like a lot of things come built for convenience and fun without any thought whatsoever to the risk, to what would somebody with bad intent do for this, or what would somebody for laughs want to do for this, right? Well, how would some unsupervised child go in and break this thing, right? And
I have been referred to as an unsupervised
not that
child.
You were, no, but you know what I mean. Like, I mean,
that's a good description.
I mean, think about it. Like laptops, when you get a laptop, it comes with like super admin privileges. Like you have to hone down these things and configure these things down so that they can be used what they're actually going to be used for.
We all know, like if you buy a laptop from Best Buy and you've got the super admin privileges on the laptop, it's not Microsoft's fault if you don't set a password. Correct. It's not Microsoft or Dell's fault if you don't set things up properly. Using a car, like you forget to change the oil because you don't know what the symbol means.
Right. That's not the manufacturer's fault. Yep. That's exactly right. So, the book lays out the not exploit, but the vulnerability and all the different examples of the vulnerability.
It doesn't lay all of it out, but only because there's a lot of different exploits that are difficult to related to either the Postal Service or other third parties.
Sure.
And there's too many variables to kind of say this is the only scenario in which this applies. It's like it's a million different ways you can kind of go, but the overarching problem is presented that way. And I think I'm working on at least one or two books concurrently, which is probably not the way to do it, but I can't get the ideas out of my head fast enough. One will be more on the mental health side of things, related to more in my life and tech in general and stuff since about that time.
Yep.
And then another one's more like a how-to guide for dealing with stalkers.
Very good.
Protecting your family, that kind of stuff.
Oh, yeah. That's great. I mean, when you think about romance scams and pig butchering and a lot of the online violence, the sextortion that goes on, it seems to me that AI and deepfakes have really accelerated that. What are you seeing? What are you finding about in stories that you're reading about or in experiences and guidance that you're providing people?
One of my agents, a representative who books me for speeches, her daughter was on a trip to Mexico and she got a phone call that sounded like her daughter.
Yep.
In the trunk of a car.
Saying that she was what? Being held hostage?
And screaming, and then the phone being passed to some dude. And that, I mean, she had to take a year off work and but her daughter's fine. Like her daughter's at the hotel. Like they just knew she was traveling. So it's OSINT, it's OPSEC, it's teaching your kids not to post. Like, okay, if you want to be an influencer, fine. Like you want to get free trips and travel so you can just take a few photos and so you can look cool on Instagram, fine. But maybe delay it.
Right.
Or at least know what the risks are.
Right. Post it when you get back. Not that, I'm going there next week. I'm going to be there from here to there. you're
Hey,
laying it all out for somebody.
Here's the time period I will be away from my apartment for sure.
Right.
So have at it.
Yeah.
Because it's not that hard to find out where people live. And it's
No,
not hard
not
to
at
find out where they've like moved to. And even when you've cleared maybe your current location, there's a path or a trail that you can follow. Even when people become celebrities and sort of, they pay someone to wipe their stuff. If they don't do a good job, it's, you've got footprints in the snow.
Yep, absolutely. Let me ask you, is there anything that can be done, or what should be done rather, about data brokers and about, there's so much good that data brokers provide for businesses in terms of leads and interest and things people are searching for to identify the people that actually want your product or service at the time that they're looking, right? But
I don't mind getting targeted advertisements.
Right.
It's kind of helpful sometimes, and you learn
There
about
is a
new
benefit.
products.
Yeah.
I definitely get annoyed when I buy a toilet seat on Amazon and then I get an ad for a toilet seat. I'm like, dude, I don't need more than one.
I know.
I'm not collecting these. Maybe context.
It's not a collection, man. It's not stamps. Right. It's
Do not look up engagement rings.
Oh,
you are going to, or wedding dresses. You're going to be bombarded for a very long time.
Yeah,
with ads.
But what about there's so many people. I just don't think realize how much of their data. I speak with business owners and individuals who are so shocked that people can find out all the different places that they've lived and how long they've lived there and the people that they're affiliated with. And even a lot of times the data is wrong. They have the wrong relatives affiliated with you or whatever, but it's all out there and they just kind of keep compiling. They connect A to B and everything that you have, because there are certain elements of public records that are out there. There's real estate purchases or leases or whatever, right? And that's all public. And then there's all the other aspects. But is there anything that you see in the industry that either can be done, should be done, or there's initiatives? Because they try and curtail data brokers. I just don't see how I don't see how they ever get control over that. I think it's too big and too decentralized.
Oh, I don't think that'll be solved until we solve lobbyists in general.
Yeah. Good point.
We live in a country that values corporate America more than individuals or citizens.
Correct.
That's just a fact. Other countries have better privacy laws. You have the right to be forgotten. You can pull your data offline and you can get peace of mind that way. You have no rights to do that here. And if wanting to do that, wanting to curtail data brokers, the data brokers are going to be pissed. That's their livelihood.
Right.
I get that. But if you played video games as a kid, like Civilization or any of these human progression sort of things, what we're doing or what we actively do is try to reverse progress at a certain point. Be we're not done with coal. We got to keep clean coal. That's a marketing dude who just put the word clean in front of it.
Right.
And suddenly people are oh, well, then it must be fine. No, we're going backwards, idiots. We're not moving towards, the reason we have MRI machines is because of NASA. I know it's not a clear leap, but that's one of the things that kind of came out of it. Mm-hmm. There's lots of things like that, but if we don't keep progressing and we don't get rid of things that aren't serving us, we're not going to be a superpower very long. It's just plain and simple. There is no superpower out there that's been around and killing it for 1,000 years. They all had their
they don't last long. That is for sure.
And
right?
then,
when you think about so many people, especially those born here and raised here, especially in the digital age, right? They don't realize how young of a country we are and how fragile it is. And the analogies between the fall of Rome and the U.S., there's a lot. It's actually extremely fragile. And I think your point is absolutely valid. So there's really no getting a handle around data brokers, is there? Because so much of it seems to be used for good reasons, even if it's not.
Legitimate, or let's call it legitimate.
Yeah, legitimate. Yeah, good point. You're right. Yeah, if it's good for.
I don't know if it does good.
Yeah, that's good.
It's in the business context. It serves a purpose,
right?
And I'm not saying they're evil. people who collect data on people who've gotten abortions, maybe those people suck a little bit.
Yeah,
but,
exactly.
People who want to know, median income, people who visited this website or collect information. The information's out there, and people have agreed to terms and conditions way too many times to count.
Yeah.
There's no way we're reading it all.
Hey, let's talk about that. I wanted to ask you about that. I wanted to ask you about terms and conditions, because I think that is one of the, we just saw the whole TikTok ban event happen where it was banned. Everybody was like up in arms, and then it was back up after an hour or so.
Someone's turning the crank on the propaganda calliope, just like, come on, spin. Like, it was bad, and now it is good. And then I voted to get rid of it, and then I'm the savior of it. And in China bad, America good.
Right.
And then I've literally had friends come up to me going, I thought China was like a third world country. I'm like, yeah, I know. Because you guys have never left this country. I've spent most of my life out of it.
Right.
And I'm walking around here like, what the hell is going on?
Right.
It took us in Seattle years to build one train track that still sucks. And it's got like 4 trains that kind of go back and forth. And it just made it up to like the suburb area. One. Yeah. And they share one train. It's not even like 2 side by side. They got to wait for one at the station. It took them so long to do it. And then living in Tokyo, they're like building subways 300 meters below the city.
Right.
And they do it in a weekend.
Yes.
And it's flawless. And you're like, oh yeah, that's good.
That's progress. That's progress. Yeah. So what I wanted to ask about terms and conditions is, forget the risk of espionage or the national security interest. Just put a pin in that for a second. To me, I think a lot of people download apps and just accept the terms and conditions because that's the button you have to press in order to get the app, right? And they don't realize, I've heard this so many times, I had no idea it's collecting all this other analytics and data from people, right? Like it's collecting keystrokes on any app that you do when you download that app on your device.
A lot of them say a lot more than what they're actually probably even doing, but they're saving keystrokes for analytics. They're not selling your keystrokes or spying, but you got to think of like how big of a machine, whatever it is that you're joining, how many people are they really using? Like there's no way they're listening to all of our phone calls.
Correct.
Obviously we've got, voice technology and AI to be able to do that for us now. It's pretty incredible, but there are apps that are transparent about what they're doing and still come out being malicious. And then there's ones that aren't. Those are the ones that are really kind of scary. It's Chrome extensions that get put into the Chrome store, or updates to the Linux kernel that somebody
Chrome extensions out there
slowly became. It's very difficult to find like embedded double agents if their goal is to do something simple and small after building a long term 10, 20, 30 year period of trust. I mean, you could be married for 30 years and then find out 30 years and 1 day into it, oh, I'm a double agent. I don't really love you. I just got really good at pretending. And then that's a whole TV show. Like, we're all entertained. How could that possibly be? Was there any clues? And we're like, they might not have been. There's no way to know what's going on in someone's head and what the intent is behind something.
Right. Yeah, and it's the same way in the code in those apps or in those Chrome extensions. Like a
lot easier to hide. And it takes a lot of people a long time to investigate and discover these kinds of things. And the one Linux update that I saw it was a YouTube video talking about it. There was some developer who noticed a spike in his CPU when he did an update. He saw like a incremental increase, and he's that level of like a nerd to know.
Right.
And I say that as a fellow nerd. Like, he noticed the spike and was like, "That's odd. I wonder if there's something here." And he went and traced it down and found a new contributor in GitHub, and like it turned into this whole thing. And then these accounts disappeared and contributors disappeared because they were spies from somewhere. It could be Russia, it could be Antarctica, we don't know.
Right.
Probably not there, but
Yeah. Yeah, it's really, really shocking. what's your view on? I'm really curious about asking you about the development of AI deepfakes and how they're being leveraged to enhance social engineering, right? Like now you don't just get an email, you get an email followed by a calendar invite, and then you get on a Teams call or a Zoom call, and the person that sent you the email is on there, and they work for your organization, and they look like them and they sound like them. I mean, like
it's
what is
like even in scams or even getting robbed, you can't get away from Teams or Zoom. Like these people, like you're getting hope this email finds you well. Like no, you don't. No, you don't. Why do we always got to talk like this? But you're right. It's hard to detect deepfakes. It's going to challenge responses. I watched videos with my son, and we notice things that I've started to point out, like AI does a really poor job of reading acronyms or abbreviations.
Correct.
So FBI is very difficult for them. They don't know how to deal with it.
Right.
Little language things that don't make sense, like aluminum and aluminium. One's spelled differently because of how differently they want to pronounce it.
Right.
And you could say that from each side. It doesn't even really matter. The way British speak is not the same English vocabulary as the way Americans speak. And within America, it's a whole different ballgame too.
Right.
So
different parts.
If someone says they're from Milwaukee, you can expect a certain sound to come out of their face.
Right.
But then if it sounds different, they better have a good explanation.
Right.
Like, wow, you sound Australian. That doesn't make sense.
Right.
Well, I grew up in Australia. All right, starts to make more sense.
Yeah.
But then if they don't know a city in Australia, maybe there's a problem.
Right.
Like you're constantly going, is this right? Is this real? Who is this person?
Yeah.
If people aren't as brazen as I think people are used to, or they're in a different way. So someone can set up a Teams meeting, you see my face, but if my face isn't really me, then I'm sort of protected, like a VPN protecting an IP address. Right. Because you don't know who's contacting you, and you want to protect yourself as a scammer. You can detect that, but ultimately it's going to be download this, enter in your credentials here, give me access to something, or send me your money.
All those normal red flags.
And all of those normal red flags lead to somehow taking your money, your Bitcoin, whatever. Right. And it's pretty easy to avoid. So they come up with different ways of bait or threats. Mm-hmm. You either get carrot or you get stick.
Yep.
I get emails today. I had somebody who was collaborating on the stalking thing, who's an adult actress. And she had someone posting her information all over the place and helping her pull that, sort of wrangle that down, and a lot of harassment and death threats and types of things. So then a few months go by, and I hear she gets an email, and it's a Bitcoin related threat. And I got one today about it, but this is one of the older ones. She gets one with her house picture on it and her address.
Oh my.
And she got suspicious because they said, we have your webcam at home of you watching adult films. And she's like, wait, what? Because she uses that to film content for OnlyFans.
Right.
So they're threatening her with releasing videos of her naked when she does that for a living. And has no like, you mean you guys want to advertise for me?
Right,
like,
exactly. Yeah.
You guys you guys were wanting to do some of the work for me. What is this? Like, it didn't make any sense to her. I'm like, it's
part of a campaign, right? It's
a form-filled thing.
Right.
They fill in your city. You have no idea what I'm capable of in Linwood, Washington.
Right.
And you need to send $2,000 in Bitcoin. Well, if they had known where they sent that letter,
right,
based on the house value or what the person made for a living, $2,000 may be a big deal, may not.
May not be.
I mean,
right.
If it's going to the Hamptons, you could have asked for more.
Right, exactly. But they don't know because it's just part of a blind campaign.
It's the premise of how much information about you do I have to know before it freaks you out?
Mm-hmm.
And usually it's not much.
Amazing.
I ended up getting a gig talking about OSINT and doing a speech about it when the two directors of this venture capital firm. I got on a phone call and they're like, so what kind of stuff could you tell us? And I said, well, you are pretty competitive in long distance races, but you usually run at like the end of the weeks. But if you're on the road, you tend to run like 3 to 5 miles from your hotel. You do some weird little loop and then you come back. You stay at the same hotels when you travel. So you're going to the same clients over and over again. And you compete and you're pretty competitive with this guy who keeps beating you for some reason. I'm not really sure why in these 100-mile races. And then the other guy said, well, are you using the same bank that you did when you got your mortgage for your current home? He goes, yeah. And I'm like, well, they have really poor security in this way. You might want to pull your money out of there. But your wife is a registered Republican and you're an independent. Does that cause any conflicts at home?
What is Thanksgiving like at your house? Right.
And he just said, my wife's a very opinionated woman. And that's all he said. And I got the job.
Wow.
It was my favorite thing ever. It's like he didn't care that I found it. He was just like, yep, you're right.
That's always amazing. Yeah, the amount of information that is obtainable through OSINT, through open source intelligence, is just remarkable.
And it's benefiting. People will try to spin it and be like, well, it's freedom of speech, or it's free press, or it's transparency.
I think it's a matter of expectation of privacy. I don't think people realize how much of it is out there.
Why don't we have a better expectation of privacy?
Right.
I mean, I don't think it'll change until there's a senator or multiple senators or congressmen get doxxed or something bad happens. But that was happening with Supreme Court justices and people on both sides of the aisle, and it still hasn't changed. So companies who control the regression or, that type of money and that type of income source, they don't want anything to change. If anything, they want to roll it back. They want to have more ability to do stuff without our consent.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, the work you did, I saw that you did work with Mark Cuban, and he said great things about you. You did work for John McAfee. What was it like to collaborate with those influential people?
Mark is a man of few words.
Yes, he's very quiet, somber person.
He's a fairly busy person.
Yes.
And it's interesting to watch his career progression. His brother and I are a lot closer. We both speak about addiction. I mean, not to throw him under the bus, but he wrote a book about being an addict. So yeah, it's fairly good. Great speaker. Mark launched an app that was called Cyberdust back in the day. And I don't remember. I think it just changed to Dust after a while. But essentially, it was a way for your messages to disappear after a really preset amount of time.
Oh, okay.
He had been going through some lawsuit that was related to text messages that he realized once you've sent a text message, you don't own it anymore. You have no control over its existence and people can use it against you. So create something that's more privacy focused. And it was really cool. I found some issues in the underlying architecture with my researcher friend, Ben, and ended up contacting him through somebody who worked at that company indirectly, and then told him about some of the stuff. And I said, well, I know Mark's private email is this, even though he lists this email on the billboard at Mavericks games if people want to email him. But I know that his private email is this one, and he probably doesn't want anyone to know about it, which is why I'm only telling you and I'm not posting it for the whole world. And he goes, well, are you trying to blackmail him? I'm like, no, I just want to say hi. And so I get an email, and it was on my birthday that year. And I get an email, and he's like, so I heard you found some problems with Dust. I was like, yes, sir, this, that, and the other. And what occurred to me, I was like, well, Brian Krebs should want to write about this. So I ended up calling him at that point. I'd already worked with him before. And I said, hey, Mark Cuban confirmed and hired me and my buddy Ben to work on his app. And I tracked his email down using this LinkedIn exploit along with something else using an iPhone and got his private email, which then told the CEO of Dust, who then introduced me to Mark, and then Mark let us work on his app. And he goes, yeah, but no one's going to verify that. I can't prove that based on screenshots. And I'm like, what if Mark told you? And he goes, well, yeah, but you're going to get a billionaire to email me? And I'm like, hold on a second. And so I emailed Mark. It's like, Brian Krebs wants to talk to you, but I wouldn't give him your email until you gave me permission. He goes, very good, give it to him. And then he said something really nice, and Brian printed it. It was like, huh, whoa. What just happened?
That's phenomenal. That's phenomenal.
It was amazing.
Yeah. Well,
But
it just
was
shows,
like he wanted something. There was no downside for either of them, and it just made sense.
Right. So walk us through the LinkedIn vulnerability that you found, or was it?
That was so simple.
What was that? I mean, there've been so many issues. A lot of it is scraping of data. What is it? Correlating.
Think of it like
things?
that. Think of it like the secret thing. So if you take a phone and you put in a bunch of made up email addresses, so you've got 100, and then you guessed Jimmy Kimmel at iCloud.com.
Right.
Jimmy.Kimmel at iCloud.com. Jimmy.Kimmel at Gmail, at Hotmail, at Yahoo.
Right. All the variables, right?
Right. And every possible iteration, and you make a big list. You put them into your phone, and you upload them to a new LinkedIn account. When it says, we know that you have these connections in your phone, we'd like to match them up with ones that are on LinkedIn. So what it does is it matches the emails.
All the different ones.
If they're real, and you can kind of tell based on profile photos or whatever. But then you don't really know which one matched because it doesn't tell you whose email was signed in. So the only way you can do it is by waiting for the next screen to then say, hey, these contacts aren't on LinkedIn. Here's their emails in your list. Would you like us to email them on your behalf so that we can invite them to join? Because we assume that those are real contacts.
It was an automation that was built into LinkedIn to build LinkedIn, to build,
so
to
then
get
all I
people
did
to
was
build it.
Subtract that list out of the current list, and now you're left over with all right, he uses iCloud, he uses Gmail, and this spelling.
That's amazing. And that's not even
it's not an exploit. It's not a vulnerability. It's just a misuse.
Yeah. But that's so common, though. Like, there's so many. It's a really good example of, like, something was designed for convenience or designed for the developer to grow it by people's helping it out. And then you can see how it can be exploited, because you can see how that could be done for bad purposes, for another way of saying it. Right?
Right.
Interesting.
And there's other apps that do the same thing. Facebook. Mm-hmm. So if you build a whole bunch of contacts with a certain area code and just start systematically going through it, you can collect every Facebook profile that uses these numbers within like a certain area, and then now you know which number probably has a person associated with it.
Right.
I mean, there's a lot of different ways you can do it and gather intel. But yeah, that was a unique way of meeting people.
I can imagine. Yeah.
I mean, it's not recommended. It doesn't always go well, or you just don't always meet the person, or they don't believe the email that they got because they think you're scamming them. There was a big bond insurance company that thought I was trying to scam them. And they're like, yeah, we thought he was really like trying to phish us or, hold us for a ransom or trick us into clicking on a link. And so like, well, what about the voicemail he left that said, I'm not trying to send you some suspicious link.
Right.
You don't have to open an email. You need to go to your own browser, type in your own website, and then remove one of the slashes from a thing, and it'll do something unexpected. It's not magic. Like I'm not that good at computers where I can get that to happen from your own terminal. You don't have to touch anything. You don't have to believe anything I said. Just go do this thing. Right. And they still thought I was, trying to hack them.
You've come across that. I mean, yeah, in our conversations, you've come across that quite a bit, right? Where you're genuinely trying to raise awareness and show people here you need to fix this. This is a problem you have, and people don't believe it.
Yeah, I might be finding the roundabout way to get diagnosed with autism.
It's okay. There's a lot.
I was literally getting ADHD diagnosis waiting at my doctor's front desk, and they put up a sign which was like, we're now offering OCD treatments, blah 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 blah. I'm like, hey, there's a typo. Ah, crap, is that how they get you? That's how they get you.
Oh my god, that's hilarious.
I mean that really happened, and
I believe it.
We didn't notice that sign's been here for like 6 months. I'm like, no one noticed the typo except for me. Damn it. It's not what you want.
That's hilarious. Hey, so let me ask you this as we're wrapping up. Like, what if you had to give one piece of advice to users on the internet? It's a general statement, obviously, but what are some of the best advice that you give people? Like there are some people that like hang their hats on passwords or MFA on everything or whatever. Like,
if you're looking for one specific thing, you're not going to find it.
No.
There's a good principle of like finding a place to ask questions and then never stop asking questions.
Right.
So like a Reddit forum like NetSec or I don't know where people like Spiceworks communities. There's plenty of places that do that, and there are people willing to help. Like Blue Sky, there's probably a lot of people who've moved over there for whatever imaginary reason or not. Some reason Twitter is problematic for whatever mysterious reason that is.
I don't know.
Like the world is bizarre right now, but it's going to make very good television.
It is. This 50 years from now, they will be looking at us and mocking us.
Sifting through the rubble with anthropologists.
Yes, and they'll be like, God, these people were really dumb. So what? So
it's like, what the hell's a Furby?
Exactly. And why did they gain so much control?
It's like ancient cultures valued these Beanie Babies so highly. They wrote about them. They prized them.
They identified as
like,
the whole thing. Right.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. What's on the horizon for you? What do you have coming up? I mean, you're working on 2 books.
I was in a car accident a couple months ago in the back seat of a car that rammed into somebody, and
that's not good.
So I've been recovering from that, but working on books. Hopefully we'll have 1, if not 2, done in the coming year, and
that's great.
More speaking stuff. I think be able to pull the trigger on launching more YouTube content, maybe doing more podcasts with other people.
Great.
I'm less like this by myself. It's a little harder to be Robin Williams all the time. Right.
Yeah. But
this is one of my favorite things to do, so I wish I could get paid doing it.
Yeah. Well, that's phenomenal. That's great. Well, we will have a link to your existing book, and we encourage people to get it because it's really, really interesting just how it happened, how you came upon it, how you tried to explain it. It's actually very good. And then when you get your other 2 things
I will definitely
baked. I definitely want to hear. We'll definitely have you back. You're always welcome here, but definitely want to hear about them as you're developing them. Both of them. Like one is a more personal one, but it's one that resonates with a lot of people. And so I think that would be very, very valuable. So,
well, I appreciate that.
Awesome, man.
Thanks, David.
Well, take care of yourself.
To, next time.
Yep. And always great to have you on. You're always welcome. And we will talk to you soon.
My pleasure.
Thanks, buddy.
Stay safe, man.
See ya. Well, that wraps this up. Thank you for joining us. We hope you enjoyed our episode. The next one is coming right up. We appreciate you making this an award-winning podcast and downloading on Apple and Spotify and subscribing to our YouTube channel. This is Cybercrime Junkies, and we thank you for watching.